What if I told you that this isn't Big Ben? And it's true, this isn't Big Ben. You cannot see Big Ben in this picture. And the reason you can't see Big Ben in this photo is just one of the thousands of quirky facts and myths about London. Now, when you sprinkle these stories into your visit here, your holiday, your sightseeing trip, they really make your experience come alive. For example, can you see what makes this Savoy Hotel entrance a one-of-a-kind in the UK? Why is it that this building on Fleet Street has influenced the happiest day of your life? And what on earth is going on inside this real-life Doctor Who TARDIS, and why are you not allowed to enter? And of course, if this isn't Big Ben, then what in the name of Prince Harry is it? And sorry to interrupt, but there's probably something else you should know. In this video, I'm also going to be including 2 stories that are totally made up, fabricated facts, just to spice things up a little. That's 10 truths and 2 lies. Can you guess which are the real and which are the fake London facts? Find out at the end of this video. If you're new here, then welcome. We make travel movies from around the world, along with our hometown of London. This is Suitcase Monkey, on why Big Ben isn't Big Ben, and a whole lot more. The Savoy is one of London's most famous hotels, but look a little closer at its entrance and you will see something very strange. Can you spot it? It has one of the few roads in the UK where you can legally drive on the right-hand side of the road, which, as anyone watching from these countries will know, is the wrong side of the road. People, of course, are used to driving on the left here, so yeah, even whilst filming, this crazy Englishman is officially driving on the incorrect side of the road and going round this roundabout backwards. Now, there are a few theories as to how this might have come about. A classic is that back when a horse and carriage were the norm, the lady would traditionally sit behind the driver, and therefore if they exited on the right, they would be able to step off right in front of the hotel entrance. Or it could just be that the driver would be waiting on the right-hand side of the cart, so would be closer to greet customers as they left the hotel. Either way, the road is private since it leads to nowhere, so the Savoy can literally do what it likes. The London Underground was the world's first underground railway station, being built in 1863. This simultaneously explains why it is both excellent and shit at the same time. The very first tunnels carried passengers between Paddington and Farringdon and was run by the Metropolitan Railway. That same section of tunnels also now form part of the Circle and Hammersmith and City routes, but technically the Metropolitan is the world's first underground line. So if you ever find yourselves travelling through these stations, you are experiencing the oldest transport network of its kind. It's believed that a worldwide wedding tradition started life right here in Fleet Street. The appropriately named St. Bride's Church has a steeple that climbs into the sky and is thought to be the inspiration behind the tiered wedding cake. The story goes that an 18th century pastry chef fell in love with his boss's daughter. Wanting to make a grand gesture as well as impress his future father-in-law, he saw St. Bride's, matched that with his culinary skills, and bam, the tiered wedding cake was born. The letters NHS today stand for the National Health Service, but the initials originally stood for Norman's Hearty Strawberries. Originally a fruit stall ran by Norman Hart, he was based in Borough Market. The NHS as we now know it began in the 1940s, and for 7 confusing years, those 3 little letters stood for 2 totally different services, a bit like what happened with the WWF. The government eventually had to buy out Norman's Hearty Strawberries. The final straw came when a large number of sick patients joined the NHS waiting line, but were disappointed to receive what was admittedly a perfectly ripened fruit. Norman soon went out of business. While wandering through London, keep an eye out for one of 900 blue plaques dotted around. These state a point of interest, and usually that a person of note has lived or worked there. For example, Benjamin Franklin lived not too far from Charing Cross at number 36 Craven Street. But you can also find Freud, Mozart, Hitchcock, Hendrix, Lennon, and the guy who came up with the name for clouds. There's actually an English heritage app where you can see what plaques are close to you, which can often lead to some interesting finds. Now, it is surprisingly simple to see the oldest piece of standing architecture in London. It's something most people just walk past without even noticing. This is the original Roman wall of Londinium, as it was then called. Its remaining pieces can still be seen today scattered around the city, which would have formed a 2-mile stretch of defence. This section here sits between the Tower of London and Tower Hill tube station, but it's something most people overlook and don't even notice. It was built around the 200s, so even without buying a ticket, you could witness something 1800 years old right before your eyes. However, there is actually something even older in London. Cleopatras Needle sits on the embankment side of the River Thames. Now, I'm adding it here as an afterthought, as it's only been in the country for 200 years when it was gifted from Egypt, but it was originally built by the Egyptians in 1450 BC, making it 3,500 years old. But don't get too excited, folks. Savvy reviewers on TripAdvisor have deemed this impressive monolith 4 stars. So, you know, it's good, but the Egyptians could have done better. I mean, not to brag, but the Roman wall, built using strong, local, British materials, now that got 4.5 stars. I'm just presenting facts. Also overlooked throughout the city are these green shelters. Now believe me, now that I've pointed these out to you, you'll realise you've been walking past one for years without really wondering what's ever going on inside. A quick search on Google Maps will show you the remaining 13 green huts, which are now listed buildings protected by English heritage. These tiny huts have provided shelter and sustenance to black cab drivers for 145 years. You can only sit down inside, however, if you have passed the knowledge. This is the test cab drivers must take, and it means they've memorised every street, landmark and route in London. So you can't come in, but your mobile phone might be welcome. Now, they can actually serve the general public as takeaways, so if you do see an open window hatch, it's worth poking your head inside and asking for a classic bacon sandwich and a cup of English breakfast tea. Now, we all know that Buckingham Palace is the official London residence of my neighbour, the Queen. A common misconception, however, is that the Queen is home when a flag is flown over the palace. This is not quite true. There are 2 types of flags to look out for. The Union flag is flown when the Queen is away from the residence, and it's specifically the Royal Standard that is flown when the Queen is present. So if you do visit, keep an eye out for this. Speaking of the Queen, as per her birth certificate, our monarch's legal surname is actually Queen. And yes, that means that her legal first name is simply the. Now, despite the Queen's official birth certificate, most people are obviously not able to use these familiar terms, opting for the more appropriate Her Majesty. That being said, it is acceptable for close friends to refer to her as Mrs. Queen, with only a select few calling her the. Did you know that there are 7 noses hidden around central London? Noses that are actually stuck to buildings and form something of a real-life treasure hunt. The first nose can be found as you walk from Trafalgar Square towards Buckingham Palace, under Admiralty Arch. I myself have walked through this archway 100 times, but never would have noticed if it wasn't for the internet. The story went that it was officially put there to mock Napoleon, or even that it was a spare part for the famous statue. The truth, however, is a bit more rooted in modern day times. The artist Rick Buckley installed the noses here and around Soho as a peaceful protest against too much surveillance. So he was literally putting up noses under the noses of CCTV. And by the way, all these photos are by Katie from Look Up London. Katie is a blue badge tour guide who does both virtual and actual London guided walks, so do take a look. I'll put a link in the description to Look Up London, which lists the streets these noses are found in, to at least give you a head start for your own treasure hunt adventure. Okay, so let's get back to this. Why is it that this is not Big Ben? Well, this is not Big Ben because Big Ben is actually hidden inside, right about here. This is because Big Ben is the nickname given to the bell inside that makes those famous bongs. Its official name is the Great Bell. The part that people usually refer to as Big Ben is in fact now called the Elizabeth Tower, which is part of the Palace of Westminster, commonly referred to as the Houses of Parliament. That's 5 different names that in today's world are all pretty much interchangeable. And to a certain extent, with how names and language evolve over time, it is now perfectly fine to refer to this as Big Ben, because people will still know what you're talking about, even though it's not technically correct. Now prepare yourselves for 3 more fascinating Big Ben related facts. For one, the tower actually leans by 0.2 degrees and has been officially attributed to the underground tunnels running below. When the hour changes twice a year, did you know that it takes a painstaking 5 hours to correct all 4 clocks? And you would never guess the method they deploy to keep the clock correct. In a 2016 interview, Steve Jaggs, who's responsible for time accuracy, revealed a surprisingly simple solution: the British penny. He revealed that a bunch of pennies are placed on the pendulum to speed it up or slow it down. He said, "At the moment we've probably got about 30 pennies on there," which gives a whole new meaning to the phrase time is money. No? Nothing. Okay. Now I mentioned at the start of this video that 2 of these facts would actually be untrue. So which do you think were made up? I'm going to put them all on the screen here for you to make your final decision. Well, for your own sake, I hope you correctly guessed that Norman's Hearty Strawberries was totally made up, as was the Queen's first name being the. So that means everything I said about Big Ben, the oldest underground line, St Bride's Church, the blue plaques, the right-hand drive of the Savoy, the old Roman London Wall, Cleopatra's Needle, the taxi shelters, Buckingham Palace flags and the noses around London are all true. So let me know how well you guess in the comments below, and I hope these little stories will enhance any future visits you might have coming to London. A big thank you goes to our Patreon supporters and you, dear viewer, for getting this far. Whether you show your support through Patreon or by liking this video, posting a comment, or just hitting that subscribe button, it all is greatly appreciated. I'll also list a bunch of other travel videos here that you might enjoy. Until the next one, thanks for watching, Suitcase Monkey.